I wasn't supposed to be home until Thursday. That was the plan: fly to Boston, charm the investors, spend a few nights smoothing out the West Coast rollout for the firm. But on Tuesday afternoon, I had a weird feeling. Couldn't explain it, just a gut thing. I moved up my flight without telling anyone, figuring I'd surprise Celeste. God, what a stupid word, surprise. Like I still believed in good ones. The elevator doors opened straight into our penthouse. That was her favorite feature, the seamless glide into luxury. But the moment the doors opened, I knew something was off. The lights were low. A jazz record hummed from the corner speaker, scratchy and careless. I stepped into the living room and stopped cold. A young man was sprawled on the leather couch, shirtless, pale, unmoving. His legs hung stiff off the edge, his arms splayed awkwardly like he'd fallen from the sky. I didn't recognize him. His skin was waxy, and a small designer pill bottle had rolled under the coffee table, half concealed by shadows. Then I saw her. Celeste stood near the bar in a silk kimono, glass of champagne in hand, looking like she'd just stepped out of a spa brochure. Calm, untouched. She took a slow sip and finally looked at me. "Oh," she said, blinking slowly, "you're back early." That was it. No panic. No gasp. Not even a twitch of her eyebrow. "What the hell is this?" I asked, stepping toward the couch, though I already knew. The silence in the room had a shape to it, sharp around the edges, unnatural. Celeste glanced down at the body like it was a misplaced shopping bag. He was feeling unwell. I told him to rest. Guess he took more than he could handle. Her voice was flat, like we were talking about a broken sink. I looked at her and didn't say a word. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, my tongue frozen. But not because of the man lying there, growing colder by the second. No, it was her. Her glassy indifference. The way her foot tapped gently along to the music. She knew I'd come back early. Or she'd expected it. Maybe this was the point. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the start of a disaster. It was the middle of one. And I had no idea how long it had been going on. "Celeste," I finally said, my voice low, raw, "what have you done?" She turned back to the window, raising her glass like a toast. "Oh, Victor, you're finally paying attention." Just hours before I walked in on that nightmare, I'd been sitting in a glass-walled conference room in Boston, pitching a scaled expansion plan to a table full of half-interested clients. My phone had buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again. Same number, our building's concierge. When I finally stepped into the hallway to take it, the voice on the other end was tense. "Mr. Blackwell, there's been an emergency at your residence. Paramedics were here. Police too." I didn't even ask questions. I just grabbed my bag and walked out, leaving my associate to deal with the fallout. The drive back to Manhattan blurred into one long stream of panic and gut nausea. I didn't even stop for gas. I coasted into the garage on fumes. My head spun with possibilities, but none of them looked like what I actually found. Now, standing in the same living room where I used to sip scotch with Celeste at midnight, there were uniformed officers, EMTs, and too many voices saying the word overdose. The body had already been moved. Only a darkened indent on the couch remained. Someone had draped a blanket across it like it made a difference. Celeste stood near the kitchen now, arms folded, her kimono tied tighter, but otherwise untouched. Her hair still perfect. Eyes sharp and bored. "You didn't tell me you were coming back," she said as if that was the problem. "Didn't know I had to," I replied. My voice came out hollow. One of the detectives stepped toward me. "You're Mr. Blackwell?" I nodded. "You the property owner?" "Joint deed," I said, then glanced toward Celeste. "We both are." She sighed loudly, like all this was taking too long. "Honestly, Victor, you're not helping. They already asked me everything they need. He was just some guy I met at the opening last week. Took too much, I guess." "Some guy," I echoed. "And he died in our home." "Well," she said, shrugging, "it's New York. People die every day." The detective raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I looked back at him, then around at the strangers in uniforms pacing through my life like tourists. I had 1,000 questions clawing at my throat, but none of them made it out. Because Celeste wasn't unraveling. She was annoyed. And that's when I knew I was the only one surprised by all this. She had already moved past it. I was just late to the ending of a story I didn't know we were in. I waited until the police were gone. The couch had been wiped down. The pill bottle collected. EMTs and detectives had packed up their questions and formalities, and Celeste had retreated to the master bathroom for a detox soak, as if she just had a long day at the spa instead of standing over a corpse. I went straight to the study. It was the only room she never bothered with. Too cold, too masculine, too cluttered, she once said. Good. That's why it stayed untouched. I knelt in front of the bottom filing cabinet and opened the lockbox built into the drawer. A black folder sat inside, thick and heavy. Label: Celeste, personal. Inside, everything. Hotel receipts from weekends she claimed were business trips. Screenshot after screenshot of texts sent under fake names. Voice recordings of whispered phone calls she made after midnight. Even a thumb drive containing footage from a private investigator I hired 6 months ago after she came home from a gala with another man's cologne on her wrist. I had known for a while. I just hadn't let myself know it. The dead guy on our couch wasn't the start. He was a symptom of her rot, of my denial. This dossier wasn't my revenge plan. It was my insurance policy. And tonight, it was going to buy me clarity. The door creaked open behind me. I didn't have to turn around. Well, Celeste said, her tone syrupy and mocking. That didn't take long. I wondered when you'd run to your little man cave and dust off the file marked, just in case she breaks your heart. I closed the folder and placed it gently on the desk. She walked in slowly, barefoot, her kimono swaying as she moved. Her glass was empty now. She twirled it between her fingers like a prop. You really kept all that, she said, eyeing the folder. You always struck me as the boring type, Victor. But damn, this is almost impressive. I turned to face her. You don't seem surprised, I said. She laughed. Surprised? Come on. You're a control freak. I figured you'd do something eventually. But you? Confronting me with a file folder? That's so, on brand. She leaned against the bookshelf, arms crossed. I used to think you'd die before stepping out of line, she continued. Guess I underestimated how much you could take. I stayed quiet. You're not going to yell? She asked. No screaming? No dramatic meltdown? No. Why not? Because you're not worth the performance. That shut her up for a second. I tapped the folder. This isn't a threat. It's proof of what you've done, of what I've tolerated. Celeste smiled, but there was a twitch in it now. Something slipping behind the eyes. So what now? She asked. You gonna cry into your whiskey? Call your lawyer? Tell your golf buddies your girlfriend banged a fitness trainer? I picked up the folder and walked past her, stopping just short of the door. No, I said. I'm going to end this. And I'm going to do it with a level of precision you didn't think I had in me. Behind me, she didn't laugh this time. She just stood there, watching the house of cards begin to tremble. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't take calls. I didn't answer the text from concerned friends who saw snippets of the chaos on social media, an ambulance outside our building, whispers from the doorman. Let them wonder. I made coffee like it was any other day. Took my time. Sat in the sun-drenched kitchen with a yellow legal pad, writing names. When Celeste came downstairs around 10, she looked like nothing had happened. Hair smooth. Nails done. Wearing one of those overpriced, casual outfits that screamed, I don't break a sweat. I break people. She stopped short when she saw the list on the table. I didn't look up. Recognize any of these? She sauntered over, curious. When she saw the names Brian Trainer, Marcus, VC guy, Elliot, Hermes director, her face twitched. Cute, she muttered, pulling a bar stool. What's this? A scorecard. I sipped my coffee. It's inventory. She rolled her eyes. Oh, Victor. This again? You're not the first man who's been cheated on. Don't be so dramatic. You're right, I said, setting my cup down. You're not the first woman who thought she could sleep her way through a business partnership without consequences. Her face sharpened. I know about the off-ledger transfers. I know about the Hermes collab you promised without clearing it with me. And I know about the NDA you offered Marcus in exchange for funding. She blinked. Just once. But it told me everything. God, you really are predictable, she snapped. Of course you'd twist this into some corporate scandal. You've always treated me like an asset, not a person. You are an asset, I said calmly. One I'm divesting from. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. You don't get to make that call, Victor. My name's on the company. On the deed. You think you can erase me with a few files? I don't think, I said. I know. She stared at me for a long second, searching for a crack in my resolve. Then she smiled small, cold, calculated. You really want to play this game, she said, voice low. Because I can destroy you. I'll say you were abusive, controlling, obsessed. You know the press loves that angle. I'm sure they do, I said. But it's a shame. Because I've been recording you for months. Her smile faltered. Audio? I said, calmly. video, contracts, messages, even a nice little voice note of you saying, and I quote, "I use men like currency. Victor just happens to be the biggest bill." Silence. I stood and pushed the list toward her. "You want more?" I said. "I've already won it." She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stared at that paper like it was a death certificate. And in a way, it was. Not hers. Just the version of her that got to win. Celeste was still sitting in the kitchen when I came back from the bedroom with an empty suitcase. She didn't ask whose it was. She knew. "You're being ridiculous," she said flatly. Eyes locked on me as I placed the suitcase on the dining table and unzipped it. I didn't answer. Just walked to the hallway closet, pulled out 2 armfuls of her designer coats, and started folding them into the bag. She stood slowly, like she was afraid to make any sudden moves. "You're seriously packing my things?" "Not everything," I said. "Just enough to get you out before noon." Her voice pitched upward. "You think you can kick me out of my own home?" "Our home," I corrected. "But that's changing. You can't just evict me, Victor. My name's on the deed." I turned to her. Calm. Controlled. "And my name's on the mortgage, the corporate account, the operating agreement. If you want to fight for square footage, go ahead. But while you're at it, explain to the board how you misappropriated brand funds for personal travel." She flinched. I moved past her and tossed a pair of her heels 6-inch Louboutins into the suitcase without care. "You're bluffing," she said. "You won't actually freeze the accounts." "Check your phone," I said without turning around. "The emails went out 10 minutes ago." There was a pause. Then the faint sound of buzzing from her phone on the kitchen counter. She didn't look at it. Instead, she walked to the bar, poured herself a drink, something dark this time. Maybe whiskey. Maybe just theater. "You're really enjoying this," she said. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm done losing." She took a sip, then leaned against the counter like this was just another verbal sparring match we'd laugh about later. "I'll go to the press," she warned. "Say you're unhinged. That you staged this. That you're having a breakdown and trying to drag me down with you." I zipped the suitcase and stood tall. "Then I hope they enjoy the footage of you at the penthouse 2 weeks ago, screaming at Brian while he begged you not to overdose in our bathroom." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You recorded that?" "Not me," I said. "Security footage. I made backups." Her hand trembled slightly. Just slightly. Then she set the glass down, the sound sharp and deliberate. "You think you've won," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," I replied, walking toward her slowly. "Winning would mean I still care. This is just me cleaning house." She stood there frozen. No insults. No schemes. Just a woman staring at a version of me she hadn't accounted for. I set the suitcase by the door and looked her in the eyes. "Pack now, Celeste, before your empire crumbles." She didn't move right away, but I saw it. The tiniest twitch in her jaw. The first crack in the mask. Because for the first time in our relationship, she wasn't holding the cards. I was. I didn't post anything. No angry rants. No cryptic quotes or pity-baiting captions. I wasn't trying to win sympathy, I was trying to win quietly. Celeste had always thrived in noise. Cameras, galas, cocktail interviews, photos with just the right filter to make her world seem shinier than everyone else's. So I did the one thing she wasn't prepared for. I disappeared and started whispering where it counted. First, I contacted our top investors through anonymous tips. Each email carried just enough to light a fire. A redacted call transcript here, a receipt there, a few blurred photos of Celeste with board members she swore she never met outside the office. I let them draw their own conclusions. And they did. Then I sent clips to her brand partners. A video of her laughing as she told someone at a rooftop event, "I say what they want to hear, then do what I want. Men are just funding streams with facial hair." Another where she joked about laundering confidence into deals. I didn't include names, just faces. Just her. The fallout was immediate. Her name stopped trending for designer partnerships and started trending under a hashtag I didn't create. Hashtag facade collapse. She wasn't pulled from panels outright. Not at first. It started subtly. A marketing conference quietly removed her from the homepage. A sustainability brand paused her campaign without notice. Then a key retailer announced a review of influencer relationships. Each one hit her like a fresh slap. Not public enough to play victim, but too loud to ignore. I watched it unfold from the penthouse, sipping whiskey on the same couch where the chaos began. No yelling. No confrontation. Just letting her truth devour her. Celeste called twice. Left voicemail she knew I wouldn't return. "Victor, let's be adults about this. I know you're hurt, but you're making a mistake. Then, you can't be behind this. You're not this vindictive. Say something, please. But I didn't. Because silence does what shouting never could. It leaves them to fill in the blanks. She started spiraling online, posted long captions about mental health and betrayal, commented on her own threads trying to explain things that no one had asked her to explain. The sponsors ghosted her. Her PR rep dropped her. A podcast host she once mentored blocked her. I didn't smile. Not because I wasn't satisfied, but because this wasn't a victory. It was a reset. She built her image with lies and leverage. I just introduced gravity. And gravity never screams. It just waits. Quietly. Relentlessly. Just like I had. 3 days later, she showed up. No chauffeur. No glam. Just jeans, a hoodie, and oversized sunglasses she didn't need at 8 in the evening. I heard the doorbell ring and checked the security monitor like I always did now. It was her, hair pulled into a sloppy bun, shoulders hunched, arms crossed like she was trying to shrink into herself. I opened the door but didn't move aside. 5 minutes, she said, voice low. I didn't answer. Just stepped back enough to let her in. Celeste walked slowly through the penthouse, eyes scanning everything like it had all changed. It hadn't. She had. No jewelry. No heels. No champagne. Just trembling hands and silence. We sat across from each other in the living room. She spoke first. I didn't think it would get this bad. I stayed quiet. I lost 3 sponsorships this week, she continued, staring down at her hands. My board put me on temporary leave. The press keeps asking for statements I don't have. I don't even know what I'd say. I nodded once. Just enough to acknowledge. I never meant to fall apart, she said. I didn't mean for any of this to happen the way it did. I tilted my head. You didn't mean to overdose someone in our living room? Her face tightened. That wasn't my fault. He made choices. I leaned back. So did you. She exhaled shakily. Victor, I know I messed everything up. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I swear to God, you're the only person I ever really felt anything for. And I've lost everything. My name. My work. Spare me, I said quietly. Please. Her mouth opened, then closed again, like she wasn't used to being cut off. I reached for a folder on the coffee table and handed it to her. Inside, the settlement papers. No money. No stake. Just her signature needed. She flipped through it slowly, her face losing what little color it had left. You want me to walk away with nothing? I met her eyes. You already did. You just didn't notice until now. For the first time, she didn't argue. Didn't threaten. She just nodded, silent tears clinging to her lashes. She signed. At the door, she turned to face me one last time. I really did love you, you know. I didn't answer. I didn't believe her. She walked out without another word. No parting shot. No slam of the door. Just footsteps fading into the hall. And for the first time in years, the silence she left behind actually felt clean. The courtroom wasn't flashy. No jury. Just a tired judge, a stenographer tapping like her fingers were on autopilot, and the low hum of tension that follows high-stakes civil litigation. Celeste sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they'd rehearsed her story in front of a mirror 100 times. She wore a charcoal gray suit, conservative, professional, forgettable. The kind of outfit someone wears when they want to look credible, not interesting. The Celeste I once knew would have rather walked on glass. Her legal team painted the picture carefully. Calm, calculated, and full of just enough distortion to feel real. They claimed I was emotionally unavailable, that I weaponized finances and controlled the company narrative, that I froze her out of decisions and manipulated our partnership to make her look incompetent. Celeste didn't cry, but her voice cracked at the right moments. She spoke of loneliness, isolation, a man who monitored her movement, misread boundaries, and eroded her self-esteem. If I hadn't lived it, I might have bought it. That's how good she was. But then it was our turn. My lawyer stood up and said only this: we'd like to present our evidence without commentary. No theatrics. No speech. Just a screen and a remote. First came the voice memos. Her bragging at a party, saying, I know how to stretch a man's ego just enough to get what I need. Then the security footage, Celeste at the penthouse door, yelling at a man I later learned was Brian, threatening to leak his nudes if he didn't leave quietly. Then the document forgeries, 2 contracts altered post-signature to shift terms in her favor. One of them signed off by a board member who, under oath, claimed she pressured him at a dinner meeting to just go with it. Celeste didn't flinch. Not at first. But her lawyers did. They whispered, scribbled notes, asked for pauses. She kept her chin high, but the cracks started to show. The occasional deep breath, the tight grip on her water bottle, the glance, once, just once, toward me. I didn't look away. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was neutral. Tired, even. But his words were clean, decisive. In light of the evidence presented, the court finds in favor of Mr. Blackwell. Full retention of property and company equity. All personal claims dismissed. All countersuits validated. Celeste's attorneys deflated like pop tires. She sat still, barely blinking. I stood, buttoned my jacket, nodded once at the judge, then walked out. I didn't wait to see her reaction. I didn't need to. In that courtroom, she lost more than money. She lost her version of the story, her curated identity, her leverage. She walked in thinking she could outmaneuver me with charm and crafted pain. But when the truth came out, unfiltered, undeniable, there was nothing left to hide behind. She still had her name. But by the time we were done, it wasn't worth anything in the circles that used to worship it. It had been 4 months. The penthouse was quiet now, not the cold, tense kind of quiet it used to be, but the good kind. Peaceful. I'd repainted the study, sold the couch, and replaced the music system with something simpler. No jazz records anymore. Just silence, or the occasional low hum of a blues playlist I'd built myself. Most days I didn't think about her. She was background noise now, like an ad you skip automatically. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Real paper. No return address. Just my name in handwriting I recognized instantly. Celeste. I stood at the kitchen counter, the envelope in my hand, debating whether to open it. Some part of me already knew what was inside. I opened it anyway. It was a mess. 3 pages, front and back, no structure, just a stream of consciousness bleeding through black ink. She started with a half apology, I never meant to hurt you, then drifted into a monologue about pressure, ambition, fear. She blamed childhood trauma, the fashion industry, the way men expect women to perform. She admitted nothing directly, but implied everything. Then came the flattery. You were always too good for me. I envied your discipline, your calm. You were the only real thing in my life. I kept reading, not because I cared, but because I wanted to see where it landed. The last paragraph was the most honest, though I doubt she realized it. I wake up and I don't recognize myself. I don't know what to chase anymore. I keep thinking if you saw me now, you'd finally pity me. And that scares me more than anything. I folded the letter carefully, set it on the counter, and stood there for a long minute. No anger, no sadness, no victory, just stillness. She wanted redemption, or at least the illusion of it. A clean wrap-up to a story she thought still had her at the center. But she wasn't the center anymore. She wasn't even the ending. I dropped the letter in the trash, pressed the lid shut, and went back to my coffee. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a decision not to reopen a door that was better off sealed. And I'd sealed mine. Celeste had sent her last word. But me? I'd already stopped talking about her weeks ago. That was the difference between us. She still wanted to be remembered. I had already moved on. I kept one box. Just one. Tucked in the back of the hall closet, high up on the shelf. Inside were a few photos, an old travel itinerary from Paris, a receipt from our first joint client dinner, and the pin Celeste gave me when we signed our company's incorporation papers. For months, I left it untouched. Like a scar I didn't want to poke. But today was different. I woke early, made coffee without checking my phone, and watched the sun crawl over the skyline from the balcony. It was quiet. No tension, no deadlines. Just me and a city that kept moving, whether I stumbled or stood tall. I opened the box. It didn't hurt, not really. The photos looked like someone else's life. The smiles were too tight. My eyes too tired. Hers too sharp. Everything in that box had the weight of pretense. Even the pin felt heavier than it should have. I set the contents on the kitchen island, lit a small steel tray, and one by one, fed the past to the flame. The Paris itinerary curled inward first. The receipts followed, edges glowing orange, curling like dead leaves. A slow, silent undoing. I saved the photo for last. The one where we stood in front of a conference banner, her arm hooked through mine, both of us pretending to be something worth rooting for. That one took the longest to catch. Like it didn't want to go. But it did. When it was done, I let the ashes cool. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. Celeste didn't break me. Not really. She just stripped away the version of me that thought being steady was the same as being respected. That silence meant strength. that loyalty should be unconditional. It doesn't. It shouldn't. I'd spent too many years apologizing for being cautious, measured, rational. She made me feel like those were flaws. But they were my armor. And now I wore them without shame. People always say revenge changes you. They're wrong. The truth does. Standing there in my quiet, sunlit kitchen, I realized I hadn't become someone new. I had just finally become someone who stopped shrinking. I left the tray of ashes out on the balcony, let the wind do whatever it wanted. I didn't need to keep them. I didn't need a symbol. The only thing I needed was this. Peace. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind you earn by surviving the worst parts of yourself and walking out stronger. I wasn't ruined. I wasn't bitter. I was just free.